May 1933, the Ob River, Tomsk Oblast. Over 6,000 people are dumped onto a small island in the middle of freezing water. No food, no tools, no shelter. 3 months later, fewer than 2,000 will be alive. The rest will die from starvation, cold, disease. Some will burn alive at campfires, and dozens will become cannibals. This is not the plot of a horror movie. This is a true story that happened in the USSR, a story that was hidden for decades, a story known as the Nazino Tragedy. Today I will tell you how the state turned thousands of people into prisoners of Death Island, how ordinary citizens became victims of a monstrous operation, and how one man risked his life to tell the truth. This is Red Archive, and this is a story that everyone should know. If this story grips you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. The most horrifying part is yet to come. To understand how people ended up on Death Island, we need to go back a few years, to the early 1930s. 1930. Joseph Stalin announces the Great Break. Collectivization begins. The forced unification of peasants into collective farms. Those who resist are labeled kulaks. Wealthy peasants are arrested and deported with their entire families to remote regions of the country. Siberia, the Urals, Kazakhstan. This is called special settlement. People are sent to develop wild territories. On paper, it sounds logical. Peasants are handy people, hard-working. If they could make a living where they were, they could do it in the Taiga too. But in reality, everything is different. Peasants are simply thrown into uninhabited wilderness, without tools, without help, without food. The death rate is enormous. But the leadership of the OGPU, the Unified State Political Directorate, is not bothered by this. On the contrary, in early 1933, they propose expanding the program, general cleansing. The early 1930s is a time of mass famine in the USSR. Millions of peasants flee from villages to cities looking for work and food. Moscow, Leningrad, other major cities are overcrowded. The authorities decide to conduct what they call a general cleansing, to clear the cities of undesirable elements. At the end of 1932, the USSR introduces a passport system. Passports are issued only to those with worker-peasant origins and permanent employment. Everyone else becomes rightless. Mass arrests begin. Police grab beggars, homeless, unemployed, prostitutes from the streets. Anyone labeled a declassed element. The plan is grandiose. Resettle 2 million people in 1 year to remote areas of Western Siberia and Kazakhstan. But the system quickly breaks down. Police officers are given quotas. Collect and send a certain number of people. So they start grabbing everyone. You don't have your passport with you? Arrest. You stepped out for cigarettes and didn't take your documents? Arrest. You came to visit relatives? Arrest. Among those detained, Ivan Goncharov, holder of the Order of the Red Banner, came to Moscow to receive his personal pension, detained on the street. Vladimir Nalhozhilov, driver at the compressor factory, awarded 3 times. Stepped out for cigarettes while his wife was getting dressed for the cinema. He never came home. Grigory Buligin worked as a laborer, had a passport, arrested when he went out to buy bread. Galina Gorbunova, wife of the commander of the cruiser Aurora, passing through Moscow, detained right at the train station. She was 5 months pregnant. Even children are caught in these roundups. 12-year-old Rekvimet Zinova, didn't speak Russian, was traveling through Moscow with her mother. At the station, the mother went to buy bread. Police detained the girl alone and sent her to Siberia.
14-year-old Alexei Muller. Travelling from a village near Zhytomyr to Vladivostok, from his mother to his brother. The mother worked on a collective farm. The brother was a railway switchman. The boy was detained during a transfer at the station.
The policemen understand they are sending innocent people to their deaths, but they have orders and they follow them, because if they don't, they will be sent there themselves.
Spring 1933. Trains carrying the detained begin arriving in Siberia. 3 transit points: Tomsk, Omsk, Achinsk.
When the local secret police officers see who has been sent to them, they are horrified.
From a memo written at the Tomsk distribution centre in May 1933. A significant portion of the deportees arrived in Tomsk in a swollen state due to malnutrition. A significant percentage are completely incapable of work. Old people up to 100 years old. Invalids, blind, cripples.
Among those who arrived, Yekaterina Zolotaryova, 81 years old, cannot move without assistance. Deported from Kislovodsk.
Yekaterina Kotelnikova, 85 years old.
Already nearly dead, cannot speak or move. Mikhail Irafimovich, 32 years old, deported from Sochi with his wife and 9-year-old daughter, legless invalid. The local secret police begin sending alarming telegrams to Moscow. This is unsuitable material. We cannot accept them. From Moscow comes a short reply. Sent. Accept them. The arrivals are held in warehouses and transit prisons. Conditions are hellish. Thousands of people in cramped spaces. No food, no water. Starvation begins. Diseases, dehydration. From the Tomsk transit prison in April 1933, one of the detainees sends a final letter. He writes to his younger brother, "We've been sitting here for a long time now. There's nothing to eat. But there's an opportunity to earn something, doing hairstyles for women who trade their bodies with the guards. That's how I earn. They ask me to do their hair. Maybe I'll get some food out of it." This letter is dated April 1933. Nothing more was ever received from him. The next stage is transportation by river to the destination. People are loaded onto barges, huge flat-bottomed vessels, more like prison ships for transporting livestock. Thousands of people are crammed into the holds, cramped spaces. One bucket for hundreds of people to relieve themselves. One barrel of water. Going up for fresh air is forbidden. The journey takes 5 days. In the barges, real hell begins. Not enough food and water. The strong take rations from the weak. Repeat offenders and criminals, who were also sent on this journey, establish their own rules. They beat people, rob them of their belongings, rape women. The guards do not intervene. They are simply observers and recorders of what happens inside. People begin dying right in the barges. From a report, in the first convoy, the death rate reached 35 to 40 people per day. May 18th, 1933. The first convoy of 3 barges arrives at Nazino Island. About 40 corpses are carried ashore. They are piled up. The grave diggers are allowed to rest before burial. But while the grave diggers rest, something horrifying happens. Under the warm sun, after several days in the cold, dark hold, some of the dead begin to revive. They moan. They call for help. They crawl across the sand toward people. Of the 40 presumed corpses, 8 turn out to be alive. May 26th. the second convoy arrives. In total, more than 6,100 people are landed on Nazino Island. Nazino Island sits in the middle of the Ob River. Near where the Nazinka River flows into it, the nearest shore is about 1 kilometre away on each side. When people are unloaded onto the island, they see an empty space. No temporary shelters, no tools, no food. Only 3 tents for typhoid patients, and 1 more for food distribution when food is brought. People are simply left on a bare island, and many of them are city dwellers, hairdressers, engineers, workers. They have no idea how to survive in the Taiga. The arrivals scatter across the island looking for any kind of shelter. They try to build huts from grass and shrubs. They dig holes in the ground. They start fires. The island is guarded by only 50 riflemen who take turns. At any given moment, there are no more than 10 guards on the island. They do not interfere with what is happening. They only guard a few tents with food and medicine. And food is not brought to the island. The first 3 days, no food at all. May 18th through 20th, the weather in Siberia is relatively warm, but then the temperature drops. A strong wind blows. Rain falls. People exhausted from the long journey, half naked, without warm clothing, begin to freeze. From the letter of instructor Vasily Velichko. The cold spell lasted approximately until the first half of June. Naturally, exhausted, half-naked people, unsupplied with hot food, immediately found themselves in a desperate situation. Mass illness began, and the death rate sharply increased. People try to warm themselves by the fires. They sit, they lie, they sleep right by the flames. Many are so weak that they fall asleep and fall into the fire. They burn alive. From the Commission report. People burned alive at the fires while sleeping. They died from exhaustion and cold, from burns and the dampness that surrounded them. The cold was so hard to bear that one of the settlers climbed into a burning hollow tree and died there before the eyes of people who could not help him. The death rate rises every day. The first day after landing, the Gravedigger Brigade managed to bury only 295 bodies. The unburied were left for the next day. Food is brought to the island only on the 5th day after landing. A few 100 grams of rye flour per person, and that's all. No dishes, no utensils. Starving people fall upon the flour. Some pour it into their hats and pockets, run to the river, mix it with water, try to make at least some kind of flat bread. Some fall upon the dry flour, try to eat it raw. They choke, they die of suffocation. On the first day of distribution, a crowd forms at the distribution point. People crush each other, trying to get something. The guards open fire. Several people are killed. Then the system is changed. Everyone is divided into brigades. Flour is given to brigade leaders, and the brigade leaders are, as a rule, repeat offenders. The same ones who established their power in the barges. They take everything for themselves. The rest starve. Write in the comments, had you heard about Nazino Island before this video? What do you think allows such atrocities to happen? Criminal rule is established on the island. Criminals form gangs. They hunt the weak. They take clothing. They beat. They kill for resistance. The guards do not intervene. For them, it's convenient. Let them sort it out themselves. A natural exchange begins. Criminals tear gold teeth and crowns from people while they're alive, sometimes along with the jaw. For 1 crown, the guards give a matchbox, or 2 newspapers for rolling cigarettes. For 2 crowns, or a decent coat, a pack of tobacco, or half a loaf of bread. Such was the price of human life on this island.
From the interrogation of one of the guards. Tell me, is it true that you knocked out teeth from the sick and dying? Yes. Why? To get gold crowns, to trade for tobacco. You want to smoke, don't you? And from the convoy guards, for each crown you could get a matchbox or even 2 newspapers for rolling cigarettes. Approximately 2 weeks in, the first cases of cannibalism begin. At first, rarely, then more and more often. From Vasily Velichko's letter. Soon cannibalism began. Rarely at first, then in alarming proportions. First in the remote corners of the island, then wherever the opportunity arose. Officially, 11 cases of cannibalism were documented, but the real number was likely much higher. The cannibals did not wait for their victims to die. They hunted living people. They chose those who were already near death, those who, in their opinion, had only a few days left. From the interrogation of one of the cannibals, "Did you really eat human flesh?" "No, that's not true. I only ate liver and heart." "Tell us how you did it." "Very simple, like making Shashlik. I made little skewers from twigs, cut into pieces, put them on the skewers, Roasted over the fire. And from what kind of people did you get the meat, living or dead? Why, dead? That's rotten. I chose those who were no longer alive, but not yet dead. You can see when someone is wasting away. In a day or 2 he'll be dead anyway, so it's easier for him to die. Women often became victims. Their breasts were cut off. Children and teenagers were kidnapped and killed. A local resident from the nearest village of Nazino told of meeting a woman settler whose calf muscles had been cut off, roasted, and eaten on the island. A 40-year-old woman who looked like an ancient crone. She wrapped her legs in rags. They were constantly cold. Another memory. They said that the wife of the commandant had her breasts cut off the day before by prisoners who had descended into cannibalism. She went insane. When cannibals were caught, they were arrested and sent to prisons for new terms, but they were only glad that they could finally leave the island. Some tried to escape from the island, but it was almost impossible. The distance to the shore was about 1 kilometer. The water was freezing. In such conditions, you can't swim. Those who tried to cross on logs or makeshift rafts were met by guards on both shores. Guards and residents of neighboring villages shot at the escapees like targets. Many were found dead in the Taiga. They went into the forest and died from hunger, cold, or in the swamps. From a report, both on the island itself and during resettlement to Nazino sites, there were mass escapes. People fled by making primitive rafts from poles and logs. They floated down the Nazinka and Ob rivers or went in groups into the Taiga. Subsequently, along the banks of the Nazinka, Ob, and surrounding rivers, many corpses were found. Corpses were also found in the Taiga, near lakes, and in the swamps. All this time, there was an instructor propagandist on the island, from the Narim District Party Committee, Vasily Velichko. He came as an inspector. What he saw shocked him. Vasily Velichko understood. If he stays silent, all these people will die. If he speaks, he risks his own life. He made a decision. Velichko wrote a detailed report. He described all the horrors he had witnessed, all the violations of the law, all the cases of cannibalism. And he sent this report to 3 addresses: the Secretary of the West Siberian Regional Committee of the Communist Party, the Central Committee of the party, and personally to Joseph Stalin. At the beginning of the letter he wrote, "I soberly realize that writing such a letter means taking on great responsibility. I admit that some points may be stated inaccurately because I used unofficial sources. But I reason this way: it is even worse to remain silent." This was an incredible risk. For such a letter, he could be shot. But the letter still had to be delivered to Moscow. From the region, it could not be sent officially. It would be intercepted. Vasily Velichko had an ally, a good person from the local OGPU office, whom Velichko never named until the end of his life. This person arranged for the illegal delivery of the letter to Moscow and advised Velichko, "Now run into the Taiga for 6 months." And Vasily left. He was a propagandist. He traveled to remote Siberian villages. He knew the Taiga. For 6 months he hid in the forests, while in Moscow they read his letter. The letter was dropped into a mailbox near the Kremlin, and it reached the addressee. Stalin could not ignore such a letter. A commission was created to investigate. The commission was headed by Kovalev, a prominent party figure. They arrived at the island on September 15, 1933, when most of the tragedy had already occurred. The investigation confirmed almost all the facts from Velichko's letter. Arrests began, but those who devised this operation were not punished. The scapegoats were punished, the local executors. About 30 workers from the commandant's office were held criminally responsible for beatings, murder, theft of food, looting. Some commandants were removed from their positions, but the main executor of the deportation in the region received only a party reprimand and continued to work as head of the Labor Settlements Department until 1938. 11 people found guilty of cannibalism were arrested and convicted. The exact number of those who died on Nazino Island is still unknown. According to official data, about 6,100 people were landed on the island, plus another 500 to 700. The exact number could not be established, were transferred to Nazino sites from other commandant offices. By August the 20th, 1933, about 2,200 people remained alive. That means in 3 months, more than 4,000 people died. But this figure may be underestimated. The accounting system had completely collapsed. Burial brigades received rations depending on the number of bodies buried, so they artificially inflated the numbers. On the other hand, many were recorded as having escaped, but most of the escapees died in the Taiga. Their bodies were never found. Historians agree that the real number of deaths was between 4,000 and 4,500 people. On the island, only 31 mass graves were found. According to commandant workers, each contained 50 to 70 corpses, but there was no accurate count. At the end of June and beginning of July, the survivors began to be resettled to new special settlements deep in the Taiga. Conditions there were not much better. From a report, after resettlement to new sites, construction of semi-underground barracks, watchtowers and bathhouses began. Only in the second half of July, there were still remnants of cannibalism here. The commandants at the new sites continued to abuse people. Commandant Suleimanov, for example, when distributing sugar, would eat the supplies in front of the starving. He forced the settlers to row him around in a boat. Beatings, lawlessness, murders continued. After the investigation, all case materials were classified. For long decades,
Only those who were there knew about the Nazino tragedy, and their relatives, and even they spoke of it in whispers, fearing reprisals. Only in the late 1980s, during Perestroika, did the documents begin to be declassified. In 1989, activists from the Memorial Society organized the first expedition to Nazino Island. They conducted what they called passportization. They entered data about this place into the registry of the Ministry of Culture. Since then, Nazino Island has been an object of historical heritage of Russia. In the vicinity of Nazino, a memorial cross has been erected. A chapel has been built in memory of the victims. Every year, in June, flowers are brought to the cross. But the island itself is gradually sinking under water. The Ob River is eroding its banks. Perhaps soon, nothing will remain of it. The story of Nazino Island is not just a tragedy from 90 years ago. It is a lesson about what state violence and indifference to people leads to. Vasily Velichko performed an incredible act. He risked his life to tell the truth. He was not a dissident. He was not against the government. He simply wanted the system to work more humanely. But the system cannot stop itself. The policemen who grabbed people on the streets understood they were sending them to their deaths, but they had orders. The guards who saw people being beaten and killed in the barges did not intervene. They had instructions. The commandants who starved people and beat them received rewards for it. Each link in this chain passed the evil further, and no one stopped. Today, in Russia, there are political repressions again. People are imprisoned for social media posts. Human rights organizations are being shut down, including that very memorial, which told the world about the Nazino tragedy. History repeats itself. Not on the same scale, but the principles are the same. Orders are more important than people. The system is more important than conscience. That is why it is important to remember, important to know, important not to stay silent. Nazino Island, spring and summer of 1933. More than 6,000 people. More than 4,000 dead in 3 months. This was not a war. This was not a natural disaster. This was a crime against its own citizens, planned by the state. Among the dead were engineers and workers, peasants and city dwellers, mothers with children and old people. People whose only crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Today on Nazino Island stands a cross. Every year, descendants of those who died in that tragedy come there. They bring flowers. They place plaques with names. But most names will remain unknown. The state kept no records. Documents were destroyed. Bodies were not buried properly. The story of Nazino Island is a story of how easily a person can be turned into a declassed element, into a number in a report, into no one. It is a story of how the system destroys people with the hands of other people. And it is a story about how staying silent means being complicit. If this story moved you, subscribe to Red Archive. Here you'll find only documentary investigations of real events. No censorship, no embellishment. Hit the bell so you don't miss new episodes. Leave a like and write in the comments, did you know about the Nazino tragedy before this video? On this channel, more dark stories await you. Stories that history tried to bury. Stories that deserve to be told. Because remembering is the only way to make sure it never happens again. Until next time.